Welcome to the Studio Chat podcast, the podcast designed to be your companion in the journey of self-discovery. I'm Barbara Thompson, your host and a dedicated therapist. I'm the founder and owner of Self-Care Studio, a private counselling practice. With my clients and courses that I create on this podcast, I'm committed to ensuring that you have the support that you need. I created this podcast as a space for you to feel a sense of connection and a reminder that you're not alone in this thing that we call life, this adventure. This podcast is your weekly reminder to trust yourself, live life authentically, and embrace the path that is uniquely yours. Together, we'll explore ways to break free from people-pleasing, overthinking, allowing you to claim your time and energy to live life on your terms. You'll be joined by myself as I take you through some episodes, or during the year I'll have some special self-care experts as guests on my podcast. So if you're ready to step into a life that's truly for you, join me on this journey. Let's navigate the twists and turns of life together, and more importantly, live your life for you. So thank you so much for choosing to spend some time with me today. Let the studio chat begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Studio Chat podcast. My name is Barbara Thompson and I'm the host. And as I've mentioned a few times before on this podcast, the reason why I started this was to have conversations about self-care. And a lot of people may think self-care is obvious. I know how to wash myself and brush my teeth and eat and drink, and that's all I need to know. But as we get older, there's so many different layers of us and our mind and our body and what we want to get out of life and health. So that's why this podcast is a great stepping stone, a great reference tool, a great way that is free for you to be able to get curious and find people out there that are your people, because it's really important too. So I'd love to welcome Erin Todd to my podcast. She's in Melbourne. Hi, Erin.
Hi, Barbara. Nice to be here.
It's so nice to have you here. And your business is called Finding Your Flow, and you're a health and performance coach. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you do?
Oh, that's a big general question, but I don't know where I start. I guess in a general way, it's about supporting people to perform at their best around their health and wellness, because our health is so important. Like if we're feeling well and we're optimizing our health, then we can perform better at anything we do, whether it be that work or being a parent or being a daughter or a son, or, in all relationships as well. So I think it really starts with how we're looking after ourselves, which, I don't know, sometimes we forget to do that. Like, again, it's that self-worth. And sometimes, I guess, women in particular will look after their family before they look after themselves, whether that's such an important thing for them to do as well. So it's really about helping people feel good and perform at their best in a way.
I think that's what people are looking more into as well. What got you into doing this line of work?
Okay. So I'm actually a trained clinical psychologist. So I worked for many years, about 20 years, in mainly hospitals. So I worked, I guess, what you would say, the more illness end. So I worked with kids with cancer, kids with brain injury. I worked with adults with multiple sclerosis. So lots of different roles. And there was a period of time about, 8 to 10 years ago, where I also had my own health stuff happening and I just had really low energy. So I went on this exploration into sort of, I guess, trying to help myself feel better. I got introduced to sort of functional integrative medicine and did some more study and sort of health coaching and understanding what's happening with the body as well, and how adding that to what's happening in the mind, so that real mind-body connection, and started my business to sort of support people around that, like that mind-body connection. It's not just you're looking at the body or it's all in your head. It's all really, really connected. And the way that we do things, how healthy our body is, also impacts our mind and vice versa. And so the idea is sort of getting out of, I guess, the hospital system to try and get into a view where you are optimizing your health and you're thinking about wellness, not just illness. and just really passionate about helping people understand that side of things as well.
I can imagine being on that level of being in those hospitals, supporting and hearing people's stories about what they're going through. What if I was to ask you, this might be a bit of a, I mean, we all are same, but different. I really believe that. And as a clinical psych, you'll notice that there's always overlying or overarching themes. So we are all different, but we all kind of have the same kind of pillars. So when you're with people in hospital that are not at their best self, what was one common overarching comment or feeling that you would hear people say?
One overarching comment. I guess often when I was working with people, it's a real time of crisis, whether it be themselves are sick or someone in their family, like their child is sick. And I think there's just an overarching thing of idea of sort of either fear, this not knowing, this feeling very powerless and helpless in that, and sort of hoping for the best, and sort of sometimes a bit of confusion about what do they do. Sometimes there are health decisions and how to manage that. But I think I think particularly when people are ill and have just been given a diagnosis, there is that feeling a bit of helplessness, but also sometimes when they have a diagnosis, it's like, okay, we've got a plan now. How do we go ahead with this? I don't know if that's really answers your question about the one thing, because it is quite, we are all the same. I think you're right, but we also have, based on our own experiences with health and wellness and things like that, and what our early experiences are, sort of also impact how we sort of go forward and manage that as well.
Yeah.
But it was an absolute, I guess, privilege and honor to be working with people and supporting them through those really hard times, and hopefully helping them through those hard times as well.
They were lucky to have you. Because if I was there, I would have liked to have you for sure. For sure. Because a lot of us, and I can speak to this too, sometimes, take our health for granted. And some of us, no matter what age, let's say, don't treat our bodies the best way and take it for granted. And then when you hear people that are sick, I think the three main things that I wrote down when you were talking about the overarching idea, three words kind of came into mind: is fear, certainty, and control. I think sometimes when our health, it could be with what's going around now, the horrible flu and bugs and walking pneumonia and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of like, okay, my body's got this for a reason. Let me find out, let me learn about myself. Let me learn, how can I take care of myself? How, what can I do to help myself? So yes, it's great to have doctors and everyone and really professionals around us, but I think sometimes it's really good to take a moment to be like, and let me just make this really clear. Obviously, this is not when you just get a diagnosis. There's more important things to worry about. But I mean, before or after, like later on, I'm just talking when you get a moment to, I think this kind of leads into the optimal health side, is getting to know yourself so you can be the best that you can be. So I know optimal health is kind of chucked around everywhere, but what would be the best way, because you work in this space every day, of explaining it to someone that's listening to this right now? What is optimal health?
Yeah, I guess it's trying to look away like a bit different. Like, it's not just being not sick. It's actually being well and optimal and having that energy that you need, and having from an inside perspective, like the bloods are good, but also, do you have the energy? Do you have the capacity? Do you have are you not fatigued? Are you sleeping well? Are you sort of nourishing your body? So it's sort of, when we're thinking about optimal health, it's moving away from that idea that you're just not sick. So often we'll go to the doctor and we might get blood tests, and all your bloods will be in the normal range. And so then you go away thinking that you're okay. Or it can be really frustrating if suddenly you're fatigued a lot and you go to the doctor and your bloods are normal and therefore there's nothing to do. But this is a shift in mindset, I think, too, because the normal range is essentially can differ from lab to lab, but also it means it's the bulk of people. And that doesn't mean that your bloods are in the optimal range for your age or your body. And so when we think about some of those blood tests, and functional and integrative practitioners do this a lot, you think, well, maybe that's, for instance, let's use an example, vitamin D. Well, maybe that is within the normal range, but optimally, maybe you need to increase it by a certain number of points. So your body is working at the best level it can be. So it doesn't necessarily mean optimal health, meaning, we just go really well and we end up at the Olympics, or we've always got energy, because we're also all very different, and sort of we're all fighting different things. Our bodies are very different, and sometimes some of us do have with sometimes a chronic illness. So our optimal health could be less than someone else's, but it's really good for us. So it's really sort of looking at where are you at now, and where could you be in the future to have that more energy, to have that time for your relationships, to be able to communicate, to be able to sleep well, to be able to have the energy to make good food for ourselves and things like that. So we're trying to be the best that we can be in a way.
Yeah, and everything's connected. So I think to a lot of people now, if they hear anything to do with optimal health or functional medicine or biohacking or green juices or anything like that, I think people now are so overstimulated and so confused that they just don't know where to start, and are just so overwhelmed. Because off the top of my list, I could share so many things, but I was just thinking, a lot of people have been living with something for a long time that it's their normal, and they just go, oh, I'm too busy, or I'm scared to know what this is. I mean, it could be a melanoma check. It could be headaches or migraines all the time. It could be grinding your teeth. It could be joint pain. It could be rashes. It could be hormonal health to do with your cycle, your gut, your skin, your digestion. Like, there's so many areas of our body that how do I describe this? So a lot of people, we live on automatic pilot. We don't really stop to think, how am I feeling? Oh, I'm joint pain, or it takes me a while to get off. I don't know what age it happens, but when you sit on the floor, I was sitting on the floor the other day, and when you get up off the floor and you kind of make that noise, and I went, oh no, I'm that person that, because your parents do it and you hear them and you go, oh, that's an old person thing. And then the other day I did it and I went, oh no, like, when did that start for me? Getting myself off the floor, kind of, that noise that people make. So I like to keep things lighthearted, but I mean, this is a serious conversation that we're having. That what I mean by that is it can be the smallest whisper that your body is giving you, and life is busy, life is tough right now. Bring up a family financially, just trying to put food on the table and trying to just do this thing that we call life. I get it. But sometimes our bodies are whispering so much that we have had our whole lives, and it's either normal. I've got this dicky knee, or my elbow's sore, or my shoulder's sore, or I've got this rash, or my period's always painful, or I don't poo for 5 days, or whatever the thing is, it can be normal. So, and then people on social media and anyone's like, oh, you got to do this, and you got to meditate for 5 minutes a day, and then you've got to get some fresh air and get some light in your sunballs, and light in your eyeballs, and like all the stuff that I think it makes people go, oh my God, why can't I just live my life? Like it's all or nothing. So what tips can we give if we're looking at optimal health and someone's going, okay, all right, guys, all right, Barbara and Erin, I want to look after myself. Where's the best place to start?
Yeah. I often talk to people about going back to the basics. Like, I was talking to someone the other day, and they were investigating how to regulate the nervous system and investigating doing things like shaking. And then I took them back to the basics, and I realized that they'd probably have less than half a liter of water a day. So it's like, let's just put all that stuff that you're researching just to the side right now, and let's go back to the basics. And when we think about the basics, and if we think about it as a tree, the roots of the tree that we need, that will be important to look at, are things like hydration and nourishment, so that what we're putting in our bodies, movement and exercise, sleep, community and joy, like what fun are you having in your life, as well as how are you managing your stress. And it's not, there's sort of 5 things I would say, and it's not about going, well, I need to fix these 5 things straight away. I think, again, it's about just picking one thing. And with this person that I worked with the other day, we focused on hydration. So how can she get at least 2 liters of water in her body a day? Like, how can she start that? What small things can she put in place? And if you're thinking about time and money and all that stuff that you just spoke about, to be able to put a glass of water next to your bed in the morning to make sure you have it, and have a drink bottle that you make sure you fill up 2 or 3 times a day, it's not that expensive. But also it's not that time consuming. And if we're busy with kids and things like that as well, what we're also teaching them is how to look after themselves. So if they're seeing us hydrating, then they maybe understand the importance of it as well. So I think it's taking some of these key basic concepts and trying to integrate them into your life as well. Often I'll talk to maybe parents who are trying to create that health in their life as well, and I just talk about, well, what's a fun thing that you do. And so often meal times can be quite stressful. So we try and figure out, well, what can we do just before dinner, maybe with the kids? So with some families and stuff, I've talked about, well, let's just dance around the kitchen for 2 to 3 minutes, and maybe every day your kids choose a song, or you can introduce songs from your youth. And it's 2 to 3 minutes. It's regulating your nervous system before you sit down to a meal, so you're relaxed, which is going to help your digestion, and it creates that joy. So if we're thinking about some of the roots of the tree, it's like that community and relationships. It's fun, but it's also managing your stress, and it's preparing your body to sit down and eat something. So it's, how do you make these really small changes in your life without it costing everything, without it having to be fancy and buying a sauna or doing this? Like, saunas are really good for you. There's evidence about that. But let's start at the basic and start at the roots of the tree and see where we go from there without putting all the stress on you as well.
I love this conversation we're having. It's so important. Let's just stay on that community and joy for a moment. I don't think many of us have joy in our life, right? For a long time, because it's the hustle and the grind and the work and to do better and be better, and that narrative of go, 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 go. And one day leads into the next. And, just looking at the calendar now, a couple of days' time, we're going to be in August. Where did that just go?
Yes, I don't know. The year's gone too quickly.
So that's the thing, community and joy. In community, it's also too, I've found through this podcast, I found a lovely community online. So when we think of community now, it doesn't necessarily mean like old school. Like if you've got old school neighbors and old school community with your kids and sports and stuff, great, lean into that more. But also community now is anyone around the world, like jumping on a Zoom, going into any Facebook groups and joining communities and feeling connected and sharing common interests.
Yeah.
And sharing stories.
Yeah. And it comes back to we're all the same. Like, it's all important for us to have community, but some of our communities are quite different. So some of it could be neighbors, some of it could be online. And it's really figuring out what's working for you. Like, are you satisfied with your community at the moment? If not, what more do you need? Do you need more in person? How can you get that? I think it is harder these days because there is more options of where to go, and you have to be able to do that. And it's also easier in some ways because you have that worldwide community online. So I think things have shifted. But again, it's coming back to what you think you're needing, and sort of really checking in with yourself. Like, is it enough? Is one of your things that you change is you make a weekly commitment to connect with someone on the phone that you haven't for a while? Like, is that going to bring more community and more connection in your life? But I guess it comes back to also that being aware of where you're at and what you might need, and also being able to empower yourself to know that I can do something that's going to support me as well.
But I think honestly, when people think back to basics of health, optimal health, I think some people would actually forget water, to be honest. But sleep, yes. Nourishment, like I like how you said nourishment rather than food or diet. And the other ones. But the two that, yeah, we're just focusing on now is the community and joy, but also stress management. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Stress management?
Yeah, so it's how we manage our stress. So stress is a daily part of life. We're not going to get rid of it. And in fact, we do need it. Like our system is designed to respond to stress. What the difficulty is in this day and age is there's lots of little things around us that we see as normal that can be stressful. So even like a text message on a phone or an email that comes in, it sort of alerts us. It creates that small stress. So it's how we find those ways to be out of that fight flight system and into that sort of relaxed state. And sometimes, like as you say, it just feels normal for us to live in a stress state, that it just feels like normal, and that's what it should be. But actually, there's less opportunities for us in the modern world, in the modern Western world, to be out of that fight flight system. And because of that, we need to be more conscious of that, and we need to have ways to manage our stress. And that could be something like managing it in an environmental way. So, if the phone's stressing us out, can we put on airplane mode for the afternoon, or have a day where we don't check it, or take some apps off our phone or something like that? If it's something else that's stressing us out, can we change the environment, or do we need to manage our own internal body? Like, is that going to help if we do 5 to 10 minutes of meditation in the morning? Likely yes, because there's a lot of research behind that. But again, how are you going to fit that into your life, and how can you make that something that is easy for you to do, that creates that pocket of time where you're not as stressed as well? But again, stress is normal. It's understanding your body and where you're at. And even if we think about stress, the nervous system as a whole, like even some of the nervous system it's all the nerves in our body, and it's how it responds to the internal environment as well as the external environment. And some of our stress responses, even like that freeze response that we've learned about. And even, we could argue that procrastination is a small state, on that continuum, is also a bit of a freeze response. So if we find we've got really good systems in place, but we're still procrastinating, then rather than a time management problem, it's probably an emotional stress management problem that we need to sort of look at. But what people will often do is then beat themselves up for not being able to do it and procrastinating, and then put themselves in a worse stress state. So again, it's understanding our nervous system, having strategies to manage that from an internal perspective, but also an external perspective as well. And again, that's part of that awareness thing as well. So I think that stress management is a really key thing to sort of support people to intervene with, because it does impact, the key stress hormone is cortisol, and it impacts our other hormones as well. So it not only impacts us at an emotional level, it can impact us at a physical level as well. And this is where that mind-body connection comes in, or one way.
We talk about stress, and a lot of people may have had it for so long, since high school or something, and they haven't got rid of it. What are some physical symptoms that you see with your clients that that they're highly stressed?
Well, there could be so many. And again, it depends which part of that system that they're in. So it could be things like your digestion's really poor. Like when we're in the fight flight system, our digestion turns off, because it's not important for us to have digestion at that point, because we're trying to sort of flee or fight. So there could be issues with digestion. There could be, again, it could be fatigue. If you're in that freeze state, it could be that procrastination, it could be fear, it could be anxiety, could be that not really being able to sit still. Like a lot of people talk about, oh, I couldn't just sit and do nothing. Where actually you could, but it's a struggle because you're in this stress state. So there's lots of emotional symptoms that come with it, again, like fear and anxiety, but there can also be lots of physical symptoms that come with it. Could be difficulty sleeping, poor concentration, overthinking, many different types of things, I guess.
Yeah. No, but this stuff is not, most people won't realize that that's stress. Most people take it down to a personality trait. Like I hear a lot of women say, oh, I can't sit still. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, we need to talk about that. Or also, if someone's listening to this now, or you've got that uncle, or my dad used to do it a lot. So I was thinking of uncle or dads, but I've done it in my life where, like, if you've got on your tippy toes and you jiggle your leg up and down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So if someone's doing that, and I guarantee people listen to this go, I do that. It's to do with your nervous system as well. So it's kind of, that's what I mean. These things can go by us all the time. And next someone's at their family dinner, they're gonna be like, oh, you're jiggling your knee, your nervous system, you're stressed. This is the normal stuff that people don't talk about because it's normal. It's like,
Yes.
that's why we need to unpack it and be like, what is stress?
Yeah.
We'll
And
talk about
it is unpacking for each person. Like, some people's system might be more prone to shutting down, so that's that procrastination or depression or not being able to get out of bed. Whereas some people's systems are in that much more fight flight system. Maybe they're quick to anger, can get really irritable, like yelling at their kids or yelling at their husbands. These can all be part of how our nervous system's been impacted.
Or sitting in the car when you get home in the garage and just not wanting to get out.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Or that,
that's a big message. That's telling you
yeah,
something's not right.
yeah. Or after the shower, you sit on the end of the bed with your towel on you and you go, oh, what do I now? I've got to, like, you have to really, you feel, because I've been in that moment, I get that often, when you sit there in town, you go, oh, okay, now I've got to do the thing, and that's just, I'm normalizing. It's very normal and we can go in and out of stress. And that's what I mean. Stress is good for us and it's part of life. And the more we embrace it and understand what enables us to feel stressed, the more that we can put things into place to help us. But stress is good. Like, it helps us meet deadlines and it helps us with all sorts of things. It can drive us. It can, push us to do some things that we may not want to do. Like, I don't know, the taxes or mowing the lawns or, I don't know, putting rubbish out. But it all matters. And I think too, the other thing, so we talked about community and joy. We talked about stress. And the other one, movement and exercise, I think is really self-explanatory. I don't really want to, that's, people get that. But nourishment is really big. And I think it's big because it's so different for all of us. In the beginning, how I mentioned that, like, we're all kind of the same, but I think this is one area in particular when we talk about optimal health. Not only is it, like, I always refer it to like a fingerprint. We all got, if you look at your fingers, we've got a fingerprint. No one has that. I've got a fingerprint. You have one. People listening to this, you've got one. It's all different for all of us.
Yeah.
So why are we trying to eat like everyone else when our genetics and our fingerprint is so different? So when you talk about nourishment, it is nourishing your body. What is good for your body at this time? So, I'm in nearly my mid-40s, so I know what I ate when I was 20 is different to what I can eat now. And my your taste buds change too. So even if we're talking about a health level, I know when I was a kid and growing up, I hated a cucumber. I gagged. I was like, yuck. And now I love it. So it's kind of, your tastes change, but also your nutritional needs change.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's some general things that we can say, like the ultra processed foods, they're not good for us. I guess when we think about eating, we think about eating whole foods, non-processed foods. But within that can change for some people. Like, some people can have a reaction to things like tomatoes, where other people don't. So it doesn't mean tomatoes are a healthy healthy food, but it doesn't mean everyone can eat tomatoes. And also, it also comes back to, obviously, you'll know this, all the gut health stuff. So if our gut isn't functioning right and not, whether we've got a leaky gut or something's happening, then the foods that we eat may be different. So we sort of have to heal the gut first, and then introduce some of the foods slowly as well. So it can be a really complicated issue, because there are a lot of people out there that they find a diet or a food plan that works for them, and therefore they think it should work for everyone. And I don't think it does. And then it can become, in a way, almost like a religion in a way. Whereas if we think about some of the in the blue zones, where the parts of the earth that have the most people that reach 100, they have some commonality in these zones, but the foods that they're eating are different. And so it's looking at some of those commonalities, and it's thinking about, well, what is it happening for me? What's my relationship with food? How did I develop that? What happens when I eat? How quickly do I eat? So sometimes it's not even, again, the food that you're eating. It's like you're not chewing it properly. You're eating in a stressed state. There's a lot of research talking about the timing of food as well that impact us. So it can become really complex. And again, I try and help people break that down to the simple things. Like, let's look at how do you shift from eating a lot of ultra processed foods to eating fresh foods? How do you create that space at dinner time or lunchtime or whenever you're eating, where it's a much more relaxed space, rather than or let's rush, get everything done, or we've got to do this after this. How can you maybe get outside rather than sit eating at your desk? So there's just a lot of strategies around that. It isn't even totally about the types of food as well that impact how we nourish our body.
If we talk about processed food, I know you and I both know why it's not the best, but I don't think people really understand why it's not good. Have you got, like, from my point of view, I'll just share that. I mean, sometimes in this day and age, it's convenience and it's a price and it's cheaper. But the best way I always say to people is always, like, it's not about perfection either. It's not about because people can go the other way. People can go the other way, and it can create eating disorders and stuff, where they go, okay, I'm not going to eat any processed foods. I'm going to read everything on the packet. I'm going to study this, and I'm only going to eat clean, or I'm only going to eat whole foods, and it gets them obsessed. And there's nothing wrong with that, but what you think about it, when someone's obsessed and really, like, cutting massive groups out of their food, that creates an imbalance in the body and it creates stress. So someone can think, oh, wow, you're so healthy. Like, you only eat meat and vegetables and fruit and nuts and seeds. And someone can be like, yes, but the whole time they can be, okay, what do I eat today? Okay, I can't have this. I'm going out for work drinks, can't do this. Like, it's that all or nothing, where I think empowering people and getting them to understand, like, I like how you said on a basic level, is what I explain to people is you look at what's in food now is different to even what it was in the 80s. So you look on the back of anything, if you can't pronounce the words, or you don't know what it is, 9 times out of 10 it's full of chemicals to make you addicted to keep having it. So then the company makes more money, but it's actually not technically food. So you tell people, when you eat a burger and chips from any of the fast food joints, or you may have a pizza, I guarantee you, maybe an hour later, you might be hungry again. You might be like, oh my God, I'm such a pig. Like, I can relate to this. I'll smash down a burger and chips. And then, like, an hour later, I'm like, I could probably do that all again and then some. A very healthy appetite. But what does that do for our mental state? It makes us think, oh my gosh, I'm a female. We're not supposed to eat. We're supposed to eat like sparrows and starve ourselves. And oh my gosh, I've just had a burger and chips, and an hour later I'm hungry. What's wrong with me? And that's what can start the mental load. But I want to share with people what's happened is that burger and chips, if it's not kind of homemade, or you don't know really what's gone into it, it's all the chemicals that when it goes into your body is like, I don't recognize any of this. I don't really know what it is. So you've put something in me and I'm going to poop it out, but I'm not going to take it as food. So that's why an hour later you're looking for food, because that meal you had before wasn't technically food. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're not getting the nutrients that your body needs. So it keeps searching for more nutrients and creates that hunger. So, that can be common when people aren't getting the nutrients that they need, then they always are hungry as well. And
Mm.
this is where we sort of are seeking out that food. But also, as you say, that mindset around what's wrong with me, why don't I have any willpower? Which is one of the myths around sort of the eating is like that you need willpower to be on a diet
Yeah.
versus looking at what your food and your meals are made up on that's going to nourish you, that's going to make sure that your body sort of feels satiated and full.
Yeah, and I'm going to normalize this. So through my food journey, like I've had all sorts of ups and downs with food and being a bodybuilder and all that stuff, that's really exacerbated food, good food and not good food to the point of where I couldn't even eat carrots because carrots are too high in sugar. So I've been through it all, but something I want to normalize with people is you think about it. I'm just going to give you my personal example. Say if I get a burger from what is it called here? Hungry Jack's. So I have like a Whopper and some chips. And I'll eat that. I'm a kind of in-between eater. Like I'm pretty quick, but I'll chew it, kind of gulp it, chew it down. It's salty, it's yummy, it's quite yum. It's really, as soon as it touches my lips or my tongue, I'm like, oh, this is yummy, right? But then if I was to make what are some ingredients? Maybe a bit of steak or a bit of mince, some rocket, some sweet potato, a bit of olive oil, and then like just some cucumber, like whatever kind of, I've got a meat, I've got a carbohydrate in there. And it's so beautiful, looks so yummy. I can't wait to eat it. I take a lot slower to eat that and I probably don't finish it. So you kind of see the difference. I'm trying to normalize it that you're not a pig. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just how the kind of compounds of the food is the burger and the chips are made for me to, as soon as it touches my tongue, to be like a little kid and get excited and be like, oh, this is real. Oh my God. And you kind of waff it down in 2 seconds, no matter how quick you eat. I think you eat that so quick to whether you have like a salad and like, some seeds and some meat and some sweet potato or pumpkin. So you kind of got all the food groups there. You got a protein, a carbohydrate, and a fat, and some olive oil, like some oils or something, and you eat it. I know personally, I'll still love that rocket or the sweet potato, but I notice my habits when I eat it slower.
Yeah.
I'm still enjoying it, but I know most of the time I tend to push my plate away and look at it and go, oh, there's still food there. Isn't that interesting?
It is. And I think you brought up like so many things when it comes around the eating thing as well. Like there's that we talked about the willpower thing, but it's like that idea that there's something wrong with us, which I think does happen a lot when people, I mean, for want of a better term, in terms of people are talking about emotionally eating, and they feel that if I emotionally eat, there must be something wrong with us. But if we think about our history and where we've come from, we emotionally eat even when there's like happy stuff happening. Like it's just because we have emotions around food, it's actually very, very normal. So if we think about when we're born and when we're before we even learn language, we connect food. Maybe it's with a bottle or at our mother's breast, we connect food with comfort. And often, sometimes, when mums are trying to, the baby's crying and maybe they're like, oh, is it food? And often they might offer up food to sort of help calm their child. So it's actually really normal to have emotions connected with food. We think about there may have been a favorite recipe that our grandmas made us or something. And so we see that particular recipe or food and it creates this feeling and this reminder of them. So if we emotionally eat, it's not that there's something wrong with us. It's that we're very normal and we have a history that have created this in us. It's not that we're deficient in willpower or that food is the enemy. And often I think when we are emotionally eating, people are looking at food like it's the enemy.
Mm.
And all these things I think don't help in terms of the nourishment of our bodies.
No, it doesn't. But I think when we look at cultures like the Italians and the French do it so amazingly. they have a balance, they know how to live, and they live on the wild side sometimes a little bit, with wine and like back in the day, cigarette smoking and stuff, God forbid. When I traveled to France 20 years ago, everyone was still smoking around. And I know a lot of French people live to really, I'm not endorsing anything, by the way, but what I'm showing is everything you've talked about, back to basics and the balance of everything and the joy. And you look at, especially the Italians as well, everything's made from scratch, but everything is such a balance. They don't cut anything out.
Yeah, and I think sometimes like, for instance, if you're wanting to, maybe you've chosen to not eat gluten, and it's not because you're a celiac, it's just you think maybe it isn't as good for you or something like that. But if you're going to a friend's house and they dish you up like a lasagna, I guess you've got to make that decision about, do I take their food and be okay about it and don't stress about it and create that community and be at dinner and things like that? Or do I sort of go, no, I can't eat that, and then feel like you've done something rude or get too stressed about it? And so sometimes if we don't have like, again, if you're allergic to something, then you need to say no. But sometimes we need to find that balance between some of those roots on the tree, like the bottom. Like, yes, we can eat that lasagna and have that enjoyable dinner, be grateful that someone's made and sharing their food with us, and have a good night. And then when we're home, the other 5-6 nights a week, we eat well. And so sometimes we have to make that decision between, well, it's not quite the food I'm eating versus the community side of things, as well, and sort of not get too stressed about it. I mean, cultural aspects are also like incredibly important. Like, I know people whose, their mums, their job is just to feed you, and you go to their places and they're like, if you're not eating enough, it's like, what's wrong? Or things like that. So it's sort of how you manage that in your own life and be okay with the decisions that you're making as well.
Yeah, it's also important, especially when we talk about the whole gluten thing, how it makes you feel. Because some people can have it and some people can't, and it changes throughout your lifetime too. So just because you can have it now doesn't necessarily mean in 10 years your body's going to be okay with it. But I know through my life so far and going through times, because it's a process, it's a learning process. It's not all or nothing. So I go, you're learning about yourself all the time. And I go through stages myself where, I'm being really mindful. I work with a naturopath. This is just what I do, and working through, okay, I'm really going to start documenting things down, because I don't know about anyone listening to this, but I can't tell you what I had for lunch yesterday. I can tell you what I had for dinner, but I can't tell you what I had for lunch 2 days ago or whatever. So sometimes I'm mindful where I go, okay, it's not from a diet perspective. It's just me. I'm going to write down what's going into my body and then how I feel and what's coming out of my body. That's all I'm concerned about. And I know when I've been eating, let's just say, less processed food, I go to my friend's house and have a lasagna, and I'm pretty good with gluten, but I can tell you about 15 minutes later, I'm like, uh-oh, I gotta go to the toilet. And there's nothing worse than when you eat really well and then you go and indulge, and then you're like, oh no. And it can make you, in all seriousness, even if you don't have any intolerances, sometimes it can make you quite sick. You know how sometimes if you eat like relatively whole foods and then I'm going to treat myself, there's a nice, what's that nice? There's a burger chain in New Zealand called Burger Fuel, and they make like, really nice kind of homemade burgers type, if you want to. But I know that, I hadn't eaten a burger and chips for ages, and I decided to treat myself and have one. And that was relatively a clean burger. And I ate it. And within a couple, 15 minutes later, I was like, uh-oh, I've got to go to the bathroom. So I think people can relate to that. Everyone's got a story of, had a trainer, I went to the gym and I started just to mindfully watch what I was eating. And all of a sudden I had the ice cream, or I had the Subway or something, and then next minute, uh-oh.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's even our terminology and language we use. Like, I'm going to treat myself.
Yep.
Like, are we treating ourselves with processed food, or what? How did that come about? And what's good and what's bad and what's treats. And I think even being aware of what your language and what your family background is and how that's impacting your decisions are really great things to explore too.
Mm. Yeah. So when you go on a date, you got to be careful. No, but in all seriousness, and it's hard. Even you can study it. I've studied it. I'm a nutritionist, and oh my gosh, there's always new things coming out. But I think if you bring it back to yourself, bring it back to yourself better than anyone. What makes you feel good? What makes you feel full for 2 or 3 hours? Do you know, like when I have oats, I feel great. And I know some people, I've got some clients that can have oats and within half an hour, they're hungry again.
Yeah.
Where I can go 4 or 5 hours easy, my blood sugar is really stable and I'm good.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean the next person next to me is like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, it's that awareness, isn't it? And experimenting and noticing what's happening and understanding what's happening with your body, and
Yeah.
which I think is
Emotional
really
eating is
important.
very hard for it's something that just kind of can sneak up on people. And it can be something, I think it kind of was hard for a lot of people in COVID because there wasn't really much to do. So people were like, I'm going to make the bread, I'm going to do some baking, and I'm going to do all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, you think about what everyone was going through at that time. Again, these three words: fear, certainty, and control.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It's
mentioned in the
similar, isn't
beginning.
it? Like many more emotions and not knowing what's going to happen the next day, and being restricted from seeing your community as well. Like all that sort of stuff was like huge.
Mm.
Huge.
Yeah. And it just kind of all leads on to, I think it leads on to like us, especially as females, really important to understand your body every month, what's happening. Just taking the time to be I've always, without even knowing, ever since I got my period, can't even remember how old I was, but it was young. I've always, and I had a little diary back then, like I still do now. I would draw a little I don't know why it was a flower. I think I was 11 or 12 whenever, I don't know how old I was when I got it. But ever since then, myself, no one taught me. I would draw a little symbol in my diary and I've tracked my period since the beginning. It's not saying that I'm perfect, but it's like even back then I had this inner knowing of, okay, this happens every month. I just want to know when it's happening and I'm just want to know how I feel. Oh, I don't feel great. And then the 2 or 3 days later, oh, that's why. And I know a lot of women can relate to this. They've just snapped their husband's head off, or they've got short with the kids, or I remember when my hormones weren't in balance, and I didn't even know back then what hormone or what that was. I was just moody before my period. And I remember when I'd go to work, I just wouldn't even want to say good morning to people at work. And I was one of the managers, and I'd get pulled up all the time. Can you actually walk in and say good morning to people? And I'd be like, I actually don't want to. I don't actually. And it'd only be 1 or 2 days. And then one of my co-workers, who I'm very close with, he'd always be like, I know why. And he was right every time. He'd be like, you're getting your period tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, you're sick. That's gross. And he was right every time. He could read me. He knew if I didn't walk in and say good morning, he knew that the next day was the day for me.
Yes. Well, this is the interesting thing too. Like women have those cycles and men don't. And we live in this world that it is probably more masculine. We're expected to turn up every day being the same. And that's not exactly how it is. And I do like there is a much more of a movement these days where people are help tracking their cycle and even making some decisions around what they might be doing based on where they're in their cycle. So for instance, when we get our period, often that's a time where we do want to sort of shut out the world and have rest and give our body permission to do that, which I think is really important versus just pushing through. And sometimes we can't. Sometimes we have lots of things on, but maybe that's the day rather than going out to a movie, you have a movie at home. Like things like that. It's just sort of starting to again be kinder to your body. Like what is it needing right now? What practically can I give it, and how do I support it? And just reflecting, if you weren't able to, then it's not your fault. It's just the world and, everyone is busy, but how, if possible, can you give yourselves that care? Like maybe it is just, I'm going to go to bed an hour earlier or half an hour earlier or something like that, and I'll leave the dishes to tomorrow, or, like that kindness to ourselves.
Yeah. And I wondered too, there's more talk about perimenopause. There's more talk of people just, back in the day, it was just like you go through the change, you lose the plot, and then you come out the other end, and then like you're old. I don't know. That's kind of like what most people would think, right? Like now there's this whole science and understanding there's this thing called perimenopause, which can last for 10 years before menopause, and menopause actually means that you don't have a cycle, you don't bleed for 12 months.
Yeah.
So people are like, oh, I didn't even know that, Barbara. So it's kind of understanding what the word actually means, and that people listening to this and the women that I know that have gone through I hate saying the change, I've just gone through menopause and are at the other end, feel so good. They feel so alive. They have a new lease on life. It's like their 20s again.
It's so interesting too, because it comes back to that mind-body connection. Like what we often think about is, one, people are surprised that they can start having perimenopausal symptoms as early as they can. Like it's, still within the normal range, even in our late 30s. So if people in our late 30s and sort of 40s are starting to have symptoms, often we feel like it's too early. There are a lot of symptoms, like whether it be problems with sleep, obviously that's a change in our cycle, there's joint pain, there's brain fog, there's a whole list of things. But also there's the psychology of what that means to go through menopause and perimenopause. What does that mean that we no longer in our reproductive years? What does that mean in a Western society versus maybe a different culture? It might mean something different. What does that mean, taking back our power to be able to live the last sort of third or however long of our life, in maybe more the wise woman, I guess. Some people are becoming grandmas, some people aren't. There's a lot of that reflection of loss and grief about maybe things that weren't done or wish they'd been done as well. So there's a whole psychology of perimenopause and menopause and going through that stage, as well as all the research that's coming out about perimenopause is actually that change in our brain and how that plays out as well. So there's a lot more research coming out about that, which is quite interesting. And then how again, how we prioritize ourselves during this time where people are having kids later. So sometimes people are going through perimenopause when they've got really young kids. And that is an exhausting time having young kids, but it's also exhausting going through perimenopause. And what can we do again to take control of our health? Looking at what we're eating, how we're moving, what needs to change at that time of life, because our internal hormones are changing. So we also need to change a bit as well. We can't just do the same of what we used to do.
I love you put a spotlight on the change in the brain. So obviously women in their early 40s to mid 50s, there's such a high rate of female suicide that's not spoken about, because in that it's a chemical change in the brain to do with perimenopause and menopause, that some women that have never experienced depression and never experienced anxiety, and they look at their lives and they're like, I've got nothing to be anxious about, or I've got nothing to be depressed about, but I'm deeply depressed. And that I don't have anyone to reach out to. So again, I want to kind of normalize that it's a chemical reaction in the body, and not less the sense of like doom. Like this darkness and this lone, and I don't want to scare anyone just by us talking about it. If anyone's experiencing that, what it could be is, if you look around your life and go, okay, I like my job and I like my partner and my kids and I've got friends, like, why am I feeling off? Why do I not feel like myself? That's a common one I hear. I don't feel like myself. And then also what I see on a daily basis is at that time, I would say most of the time, I've noticed women that when they're going through peri, it's like their kids may be leaving home, they have aging parents that they need to care for. Their whole role in their network has changed. So not only are they feeling maybe some physical symptoms that are just horrendous, they feel so disconnected from their partner. Maybe they feel disconnected from themselves. Like, I just don't feel like myself anymore, and I don't know why. I feel really down. I don't know why. And then their home life is changing. The kids are moving out. The kids don't need you anymore, or they might be playing up. And then your mum and dad may be like just getting old and you have to care for them, or they're going to a home, or they may be ill, or like it's all this pressure. Or sometimes you own a business, and so you've got that on the top of your shoulders as well. So that feeling of I feel really flat, or I feel foggy, or I just feel down and I have nothing to be down about. It could just be that chemical, what's happening on in the brain and the hormones.
Yeah, the change in hormones. And often it is that, like often we have cycles that don't release eggs, therefore there's not as much progesterone being released, and therefore progesterone is a hormone that sort of helps chill us out. It helps us sleep, reduces anxiety, and suddenly we're not sleeping. When we're not sleeping, that can be really hard. It can impact our decisions about what we're eating during the day. We feel bad about ourselves. We feel exhausted. So there can be sort of definitely knock-on effects. And again, it's being aware of where you're at. Like, what support do you need? What are you loving about this period as well? Like, what is really difficult about this period? Sometimes just knowing that there's a change in the hormones and the estrogen receptors and the impact can take away the stress of what's happening, and that this is just a change you're managing. So, information can be power, being aware of what you're needing to do, trialing some things that might be useful, taking some responsibilities off yourself, or changing up your exercise routine. These are all things that can also support you too. Going to a doctor. Some women are taking hormones to support them. That's an individual decision as well. And finding a good doctor where you can have those conversations with, I think, is really important as well. So there's lots that can be done and thought about. And if you're willing to give these things a go and sort of experiment and see as well.
And find people in your corner that will listen to you. If you have a doctor that's been your doctor for ever since you were born, but they don't want to know about perimenopause, or they can't help you, please go to 2 or 3 or 4 doctors until you find someone that you can have a really good, I'm due to go for my blood work and stuff soon, and I'm looking at a new doctor. So she looks good on paper. So I'll have to report back and let everyone know what she's like. So she looks good on paper. And what I do is I take a list with me, really in depth. So I go in, ask all my questions, and I'm going to read her and see what she's like, because that's what you want. They're not the boss of us. They're not any better than us. They're on the same level as us. And a good doctor should be able to help us.
And you want someone to collaborate and listen to you.
That's what I was thinking of. We don't want someone to, there's always an imbalance of power. Same as a therapist and a patient or client, same as a doctor. When you go in there, don't be scared of them. And I do. I'm not lying. I go in with written things down. I've got this and this, and not that I have a lot, touch wood, nothing. It's just I want to know about myself, and I test them a little bit. Because if someone's going to think about it, if someone's going to look after your health, we need to interview them. Like, this is serious stuff. Just because, again, in any industry, just because someone's got a bit of paper on the wall,
yep,
they're going to be operating on my brain, or they're going to be doing something. I want to know that I'm comfortable that, okay, they kind of know what they're doing. We're all human. So don't be afraid to be like, and even if you just don't like them, I just kind of want to put it out there. If you're sitting there and talking to them, and I've had this before, I've had doctors roll their eyes at me or be quite rude, or be disrespectful. I'm like, sorry, I'm not going to sit in front of someone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Find your right fit for you.
Yeah. Really important. Listen to yourself. So what a great conversation today we've had on everything to do with optimal health. It's been so interesting, and I hope that it really is a good starting point for anyone listening to this that has been like, oh, I want to find out more about how to optimize my health.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Like, I mean, I do think everything is connected. Like, again, often if we're eating well, it means we have more energy to do exercise, if we're hydrating ourselves, if our mindset's in a good place. So, like all these things, the mind-body stuff is really, really connected.
It takes time, and it takes to be curious and actually being interested. Find what you're interested in. If it's more movement and exercise, dig deep on that. Or if you're more interested in food, or if you're more interested in how the mind works, we all have a pocket of something that, oh, that's interesting. Find what interests you, because I know all of them. Some of them you'll be like, oh, yeah, community and joy. Yeah, that's not really my thing. Well, why don't you, like you said, work on the other things that are back to basics. Work on maybe learning about sleep more, or nourishment, or stress management, and then work your way back from that.
Yeah, and joy should be everyone's thing. Have some pocket of joy in your life.
Sometimes I think it's the word joy. People go, really? Is that a thing in 2024? Can people
fun? Maybe
can
fun.
people have joy? Yeah, I know. So I'd love people to connect with you if they really have, connected with you in this episode, or want to work with you or find out more about you. Where's the best place? Where is the best place for people to find you?
Yes. So I am on Instagram. So it's findingyou_flow. So they can connect with me there. I've got a website, findingyourflow.com.au. Look, the other thing is I'm putting some things on Insight Timer. It's a meditation app, and I've put some just tracks on it, but I will have an emotional eating course up there in the next few weeks. I do use different therapeutics type strategies that I've learned as a psychologist that I bring into my coaching as well. And I'm hopefully going to put a course on improving your golf on Insight Timer as well, which I'm helping my husband. It's all about performance.
Yeah.
But yeah, reach out if you have any questions. I'd love to hear from anyone who has questions. I support women through perimenopause as well. It just depends on where you're at in terms of and what you need. So please reach out. I'd love to hear from anyone.
Yeah, thank you so much for being my guest today and talking about something that a lot of people can just gloss over and be like, oh, I know what health is. I know what I should be doing. But we actually spoke about some really important things today. So, yeah, thank you. It's not just me talking about it all the time. It's probably good that someone else is talking about it.
It was a pleasure and lovely to be on the show. And thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I hope this conversation has added value to your self-care journey and inspired positive changes in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing it with a friend who might benefit from this episode. Don't forget to subscribe on Spotify or on your favourite podcast platform to stay up to date on future episodes. Your support means the world to me. I genuinely love hearing from you, so please take a moment to leave a review. Let me know which part of today's episode resonated with you the most. Your feedback guides the direction of this podcast, and I really appreciate each and every single one of you for being a part of this community. To fall in love with yourself is the first secret to happiness. To find out a bit more about the Studio Chat podcast, head over to my Instagram page, Studio Chat Podcast, or if you want to find out a bit more about my counselling private practice, head over to Instagram on self_care_studio. Or head over to my website, selfcarebybarbarathompson.com.au. I'm really looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. Until next time, take care of yourselves and keep embracing the journey of self-discovery.